Wednesday, August 30th, and this is Geeknights. Tonight we bring you the secret panel from Otakon 2006, meaning the Webcomics Roundtable that we recorded in the Renaissance Hotel on Saturday night.
Let's do this.
So there's something I gotta get off of my chest. Things that are
your boobs.
hurting this community more so now is that...
How long are we going to carry on with this inside joke that is impossible to share with the world?
Because it may someday be shared with the world.
Let's try to make some progress in that area.
Actually, though, I do have something I can get off my chest. I would like to say that protein supplements and protein bars are perhaps the vilest constructions known to man.
That's why I don't eat them.
Good fucking God, do those things not taste good?
Well, I mean, what tastes good in the world? Ready? Sugar, spice,
all right,
and fat. That's what tastes good. Protein does not taste good. Protein doesn't taste like anything.
No, protein can taste good. Protein, you realize, Scott, is a very broad category of things.
Yeah. But, the proteins are generally a collection of amino acids.
And in fact, Scott, some of the best tasting meats are extremely lean and have very little fat in them at all.
Yeah, but without
so what
any,
do you think
without any fat, the meat would taste bad.
So what do you think is in those meats?
Meat.
Okay, and what is meat made out of?
Meat.
Yes, meat is made out of protein, among other things.
Yeah. Then how come they don't make a meat bar that tastes good?
You know what? They do. It's called jerky.
Then why are you eating a nasty-ass protein bar?
Because I needed more protein.
Then
See, the thing is...
more jerky.
See, the thing is just that my diet for most of my life has not been conducive to any sort of non-aerobic exercise because I tend to eat a lot of carbohydrates and very little else.
Well, that's what the food pyramid says to eat.
Yeah, which means that I've been my scrawny self for a long time, and now I need a little bit of protein because I'm trying to lift a few weights.
What, do you want to be like a muscle man?
No, I just want to stay in shape for... basically, my entire body is in shape, as in, no, just my legs are in shape, and the rest of my body was kind of weak. You know, from running and biking and all that.
So what do you get? So
of course, I always feel funny because I got my tiny little 10-pound free weights, and then there's Pete who could probably just bench press me.
All right, so let's say you're not weak anymore. What are you gonna do with your newfound strength powers? You gonna go become Spider-Man?
You know how much time I'll save by opening doors more quickly?
Okay, that's less time than you spent lifting weights.
I believe. This is another inside joke, but I'll open the hell out of doors.
That's for sure.
See, the only thing I wanted to say is that protein bars and protein supplements taste like assholes.
It is a general rule of thumb that 90% of foods that say they are nutritional or advertise themselves as being nutritional taste like ass or have no flavor at all. And in the Book of Scott, that means they should not be eaten.
But anyway, we're going to go real light on the news and the things of the day today because we are finally going to air the secret panel that we ran at Otakon 2006.
Dun, dun, dun.
You see, we generally, if you listen to our coverage of Otakon, or Fast Karate for the Gentleman's coverage of Otakon, or Anime World Order's coverage of Otakon, you might have gotten the impression that many of us did not particularly care for the vast majority of the panels that happened at Otakon.
Yeah, of course, again, can't blame Otakon for that.
Oh, not at all. In fact,
you can blame them a tiny bit for not caring.
Otakon's panels, despite their problems, were not as bad as the panels at lesser cons we attended.
That is definitely true.
Yeah, you can listen to our old con reports to get all that.
But the point is that in general, at pretty much every anime convention that we know of, that we've been to, and many of our accomplices have been to, panels are
I like
sucking.
accomplices. I like that. Although you should have said maybe henchmen, cohorts.
I don't know. Panels are sucking lately, in general, overall. There are still good panels. There is still absolutely terrible panels, but the average is going down.
So what we did is, well, actually what I did, because Scott actually was out, I think you were watching a terrible movie.
I was watching some terrible-ass movies.
Yeah, well, Scott was doing that. I was getting myself nice and drunk, and then all the webcomic artists I know and the webcomic artist friends of the webcomic artists I know ended up in our hotel room. So I decided, all right, I'm going to do that thing I said I'd do that I didn't think I'd actually do, and actually sit them all down with microphones and kind of interview all of them. And it turned into what I think is a pretty good panel.
I think that you had the advantage of alcohol, which normal panels do not have. I think alcohol, while I don't drink it, would make every panel more interesting.
See, the thing is, you really couldn't tell that anyone had been drinking if you listened to it. Though I have not listened to all of it, and I will say that Conrad is like that anyway, regardless of the amount of alcohol in him.
Yes, that's absolutely true. I haven't listened to... I listened to the end because I showed up for the end of it.
Yep.
But that's it.
Yeah, as opposed to the roundtable you helped me run, where you kind of just sabotaged the whole thing.
I was mad tired. I wasn't sabotaging on purpose. I was trying to do good.
Well, the funny thing is, in this one that we're going to play, on this episode, you can really hear my voice pretty much in the final throes of it dying. Because my voice is squeaking all over the place, and as you all know, we both lost our voices on Sunday.
Yeah. Okay.
I blame podcasting.
Oh.
So anyway, to keep it brief, in the news, the anime, manga, comics, webcomics news, my news is very brief, very to the point. Death Note Volume 7 came out.
In English.
Now,
It's been out in Japanese for a long time.
this would not normally be news. However, for those of you who have read it, you will know why I'm bringing this up as news. And for those of you who haven't, I will simply say that when you read Death Note 7, be prepared to read the whole thing in one go. And be prepared.
Death Note 7 is perhaps the most important and best volume of Death Note. Well, it contains the most important and best chapters of Death Note, in my opinion. It also begins the turning point that sort of starts phase 2, where the manga changes gears from being one thing to being another thing. And I'll reserve my opinions of phase 2 for another time, but let it be known that there are 2 moments in the manga that are basically tremendously important. And
Like, if you thought some of that stuff with Penber early on was a big deal, you haven't seen anything.
Yes, and both of these moments receive dual-page spreads. The first moment should be very early on in Volume 7, and the second moment should be much later on in Volume 7.
Now,
The first one is my favorite, and the second one is the most important.
see, the second one was a moment when I realized that there was a character in this manga that I had been a little sympathetic to, and I kind of liked, and I didn't like that character anymore after that point at all.
Yeah, the first part was when I realized that, my
Yeah.
favorite one, because
Well, true, that part too, because then you realize, oh.
it was like, OMG, OMG, doo-doo-doo, double-page spread. And then the next page, it's like,
Yeah, you can tell I've been wanting to talk about this since over a year ago when we read this.
Yeah.
And it's finally out in English, meaning sometime in the near future we are going to do a show on Death Note with
We'll
spoilers.
do a show on the first half of Death Note.
With spoilers.
With spoilers.
Because I got some things that I got to get off of my chest, things that are hurting this community more so now.
Okay. Speaking of manga and other comics, I don't know how long this has been on the internet. Oh, it's only been on the internet since August 18, 2006. Cool. This is a list of the 2005, so last year, comics and graphic novel best sellers from 1 to 100. And number 1 is Full Metal Alchemist Volume 1. This is in English, by the way.
You're not going to read the whole freaking
No,
list.
I'm not. But basically, it's Naruto, Sin City, Star Wars. And then the whole rest of the list is Naruto, Sin City, Fruit Basket, Star Wars, Kenshin, DN Angel, Inuyasha, and Death Note.
Now, of course, the ultimate question here is how many underwear pervert, a.k.a. superhero comics?
Yeah, because, look, this is the 100 best-selling graphic novels and comics in the U.S. in the year of 2005, and the top of it is completely dominated by manga, except for Sin City and Star Wars. And there is some scattered Calvin and Hobbes about, and I think one Far Side and maybe a Peanuts.
Now, way at the bottom,
number 99 is R. Crumb, okay, and there's some Calvin and Hobbes down there. But number 66 is the first. So there are 65 manga and other stuff. Number 66 is Batman Hush Volume 2, the best-selling underwear pervert comic or graphic novel of the year. Number 48 was Attack of the Deranged Mutant Killer Monster Shoguns. That sold better than every single underwear pervert. 63 was Warcraft, the Sunwell Trilogy, Volume 1.
God.
From Tokyo Pop. It sold better than every underwear pervert. Yu-Gi-Oh! #1 sold better than every underwear pervert.
Yeah, you know what?
Mega Tokyo Volume 3 outsold every single underwear pervert except that single Batman beat it by 2 spots on the list.
You know what this means? It means that the comic industry in regards to underwear perverts, aka superheroes or super dash heroes, isn't doing so well.
No, it's really not doing good now.
And I think the way to sum it up is that when we went to Free Comic Book Day to get our free comic books, the proprietor of the comic book shop we went to seemed somewhat angry that we were not willing to purchase his underwear pervert comics and that we just wanted our free comics.
Now here's the best thing. Ready? The second underwear pervert on the list is Batman Hush Volume 1 at number 76. The third underwear pervert is Batman Dark Knight Returns, which is actually really good. It's Batman written by the Sin City guy. I have it, and it's damn good. You should read it. But it's number 85. And the only other underwear pervert on the entire list is 89, Watchmen. Watchmen, perhaps the greatest underwear pervert comic ever, was outsold by Mega Tokyo, Volume 3, Warcraft something Volume 1, and a whole shit ton of manga.
I hate to say it, but it makes me really happy, partly because I really don't like underwear pervert comics in general, and I'm kind of glad that I'm not alone in this sentiment. And two, though, it makes me a little sad that Watchmen really needs to be widely read, because Watchmen is excellent.
Yeah, the general problem I have is that, there's a whole genre of comics that involve underwear perverts. And as in any genre, some of them are damn good, like Watchmen and Batman Dark Knight Returns.
I don't think the word some, I think the word one would suffice.
No, there are a few.
Oh, 3.
There are more than 3, but not many. Percentage-wise, less than 1%. Yet, the comics, they have stores. They have an entire distribution company dedicated to one genre in one medium. And in the United States, there is an entire medium that is dominated by one genre. And a better-selling genre in the medium, well, I guess manga's not a genre, but it's a subset of a medium of, graphic, whatever.
Yeah.
Is kicking its ass, yet the market won't change. They're still dominating the comic book store with superheroes. If they were smart at all, look at these numbers. If you were going by what sells, you would cancel every freaking superhero book.
Well, that leads right into the things of the day, because Scott's thing of the day is quite underwear perverty.
Yeah, it sure does piss me off. Those comic book companies do not make economically wise decisions that would benefit my entertainment.
Anyway.
Yeah. But here's a good example of what's wrong with underwear pervert comics and why they're not so great. This guy did a pretty cool thing on his blog. He took Watchmen, a great comic. We just talked about it 2 seconds ago. And he redid the cover and 4 pages of Watchmen. He redid all the text in the style of writing that is known to befit Stan Lee, with, random bolding of words and crazy made-up words. And
that is precisely what I hate about underwear pervert comics.
Yep. So he takes a great underwear pervert comic that doesn't have the things that are hated, and he adds the hated things, and it really just shows you, like, if you don't notice it reading a normal underwear pervert comic, you look at this and you go, oh, that's why they're stupid. Look at that.
The bolding wouldn't be so bad if it wasn't that they bolded random words instead of useful words or words that made sense.
Yeah. But this just shows how they took the standard of what superhero comics are, took it and merged it with the greatest pinnacle of superhero comics, and it turns to crap. And it's just, the concept is just so perfect. It's golden. You got to look at it.
Yeah, it's especially special to me after you might have heard my rant on another podcast a while ago about the bolding.
Yep.
Because I was unable to finish reading a comic recently because the bolding just bothered me so much I couldn't force myself to read it.
And that was just the bolding, let alone the writing style and other things.
Yeah, I didn't even get to the plot or the characters or the writing or the art or anything. The balding alone stopped me.
All right.
You know what? Now, I'm going to actually pass on having a thing of the day today.
Well, you suck.
Because I didn't have anything particularly relevant to anime, manga, comics, webcomics. And I don't want to start another trend of having super, super long episodes because I think we tried to wean ourselves off of that just before Otakon. Plus, I have to do a whole bunch of editing to make this thing listenable before it goes up.
The problem is it's hard not to make a long episode when we're playing a pre-recorded bit.
Yeah, anyway, I hope you all enjoy it. They talk about a wide variety of topics, and they introduce themselves, so I won't bother reintroducing them before.
Yeah, I'm going to have to download this and listen to it.
So we're here at Otakon 2006 with a variety of slightly drunk to completely drunk webcomic artists, webcomic aficionados, anime fans, general ne'er-do-wells, and Conrad.
C-squared! Yes, C-squared.
So I guess everyone who's here could introduce themselves so we can at least tell whose voice is whose. I am, of course, Rim, your favorite host of Geeknights.
My name is Brian Carroll. I do Instant Classic.
My name is Mookie. I am the writer and artist of Dominic Deegan, Oracle for Hire.
Hi, I'm Aido. I do a comic called Fallen.
Hi, I'm Kat. I actually do nothing.
My name's Connor Krailing. I have no discernible skills or talents, but I was invited here tonight to talk to you about things.
Good things.
My name is Larom Lancaster, and I used to take part in Committee, but now I just simply feature in it.
So we're not doing anything particularly big here, but I guess I'd like to get impressions of Otakon, the Artist Alley, the con in general. I mean, some of you go to more cons than others, so I guess I won't direct this to anyone in particular first, but how was Otakon? Why are you here?
Well, Otakon is the biggest convention of the year for a lot of us here on the East Coast. And speaking personally, as someone who makes a living off of his webcomic, this is where most of my income usually comes in. So as in every year, I have a fabulous time because most of the people who don't go to any convention, most people who go to only one convention a year come to this one. And you just meet everybody, whether you want to or not.
I agree with that. It's also my biggest convention. I do about 2 or 3 a year. And although I don't usually have that much of a big representation here, I usually use it to meet up with my friends, webcomic friends, people I only see about 2 or 3 times a year themselves.
We talk fascism, communism, the whole 9 yards.
Food,
Food.
This is actually my third con, and I still don't know why I go, but I'm here, and it's a good time. I see people, and I do things. Exciting.
So most of you spend your time in the Artist Alley, I take it, at the convention.
That's true.
Now, how is that? I mean, the Artist Alley tends to be a very eclectic collection of artists of all different stripes, ranging from complete fan artists to totally original works. What do you guys do in the Artist Alley, aside from obviously selling art? I mean, do you promote yourselves? Do you just socialize? Is it networking? What is the Artist Alley? Why are you there?
The Artist Alley is so fascinating because it is so many different things at once. It is all those things. People promoting themselves, original artwork, fan artwork, and networking. And you don't really have to really go out of your way to do any of the more social parts of it because fascinatingly enough, it always seems to just come to you because the Artist Alley by nature is just so diverse.
I think this is actually interesting because me and Mookie are on different sides of the coin with Artist Alley. People will go to Artist Alley seeking out Mookie, whereas I am looking for promotion myself. So, whereas Mookie, I don't think you're really promoting yourself. You're already promoted. You're more there for the public.
More for the
public
representation,
showing.
Yeah.
And I'm there for the promotion. So I think that's interesting on two sides.
So in terms of self-promotion, does it ever feel awkward trying to promote yourself? I mean, there's a fine line between selling something you do and, becoming off as a person who's trying to sell something you do. Do you walk that fine line? Do you ever, you're giving a spiel to someone and you just feel awkward while you're doing it, or you wonder if maybe you overstepped a line or something?
Well, in terms of the actual line, I'll just answer. But, it's not really like a carnival where, I'm on the dunking booth shouting at people to go hit me down, hand me $3 and throw a ball at my target. It's, I guess the line is crossed between if you seek them out or if they seek you out. Like my display this year, I spent a long time on it, so I was bringing people to it, and therefore I can promote myself that way.
Some people I think are a little too aggressive in the Artist Alley. I mean, my first year ever at Otakon, I was next to a guy who wasn't doing so well, so he would literally yell at people who were walking even remotely near his table, and saying, "You come here, you come here," and they would, because a lot of geeks are very shy, and when someone starts yelling at them to do something, they'll probably do it.
So do you
handing them flyers? So.
Do any of you ever go? I mean, this is obviously an anime convention, which tend to be very broad based. Do you ever work at, or not just work, but do other conventions, maybe comic centered conventions or other types of conventions? Are there any different from anime conventions? Do you even go to them?
I go to one every year that's more sci-fi fantasy and almost Ren Fair centered, called Icon on Long Island. The sci-fi fans are much different than the anime fans. They're much more selective in what they spend their money on. They're a lot less willing to show you how enthusiastic they are. And a few of them, I feel like some of them they can look down their nose at you. But the anime fans are starting to creep in. Excuse me. A lot of them anime fans are starting to creep into that convention too. And whereas anime fans tend to be very enthusiastic and open and almost accepting of new things, the older school sci-fi fans are more pushing them away. And I think they should be more accepting. Another convention I went to was Wizard World Boston, which I failed at miserably. Wizard World Boston had a bunch of comic fans, and it was so strange because there was one guy dressed up the entire weekend as the Green Lantern, and these people at this convention flipped.
Wait, so
one guy in costume.
So he was dressed up as the Green Lantern for all 3 days.
No, one day. One guy just showed up one day and drew an immense crowd because everyone was making a huge deal. Look, there's somebody in costume at an anime convention. How often do you see that?
No, I went to Philly Wizard World Philly Wizard World. I emphasized the wrong syllables there. Philly Wizard World was a scary convention that we devoted a great deal of coverage to.
Which one did you go to, Mookie?
I went to Wizard World Boston.
They're basically the same thing as far as I can tell.
Yeah, just different locations.
And we ran into the situation where anime cons, I pull out a microphone and I try to interview someone, and the 10 fangirls around will run over and, interview me next. Oh my God. At Philly Wizard World, I couldn't get anyone to interview with me. I even without the microphones in my pocket, I'm just some dude at the con, and I walk up and I try to ask someone like, hey, how you doing? And they just look at me with this look of, who are you and why are you talking to me?
Very different crowd. I prefer the anime crowds tenfold to the comic book convention crowds.
So how is the social atmosphere in the Artist Alley? I mean, obviously I noticed that people who come for the Artist Alley tend to stay in the Artist Alley most of the con and yet enjoy themselves immensely. And all the best stories from conventions I hear are things that happened in the Artist Alley late at night when the crazies come out.
Yeah, I'm in for the social aspect of the Artist Alley. I really couldn't care less if I made money because the money is really secondary to me. It's just mostly meeting people who I know on the internet and being able to meet other webcomic people.
Actually, I have an interesting story about that. I shouldn't have even attempted to do this, but I was fighting with Kinkos today, and I just so happened to meet an artist from the Artist Alley who I had no idea who it was at the Kinkos. They were also messing up his work, so we kind of had that common interest, and he was having his stuff printed out, and he saw my badge, had artist written on it, and we just kind of struck up a conversation in terms of what's going on. So like that kind of social, it's very, very friendly. Everyone's very accepting. Even though he didn't know my work, I didn't know his. I'm not that much into anime, and he was an anime artist, but we still had, it was a very, very social environment.
So to change directions entirely for a moment, now all of you are at an anime con right now, so I guess if you do enjoy anime, what was the first anime you ever saw? Like, what was it that got you into this, either into anime as a fan or into the subculture of anime, as in you're going to conventions now on a regular basis?
Okay, I'm going to say this for the record. I do not really enjoy anime. I used to when I was in 7th and 8th grade, but I remember in 6th grade, my gateway drug was Pokemon. I watched it
Gotta catch 'em all.
when I was 12 years old, and I wanted to be that.
For me, I used to deliver my papers early on my paper route so I could get home and watch Dragon Ball Z.
My dad is Japanese, and I grew up on Doraemon and the original Dragon Ball. unsubtitled, untranslated. I would just watch it with my dad, and he would translate it for me at key points.
Actually, every morning in middle school when I lived in Florida, Dragon Ball Z came on at about 6:30 in the morning, and I will admit this right here. I've never admitted this to anybody. I watched several episodes of Dragon Ball Z, not even knowing what it was, and I don't regret it. No regrets.
I have been dating this boy for 2.5 years, and I never knew that.
For the record, his power level is
Who
above
are
1
you?
I
million.
figured this is the best place, kind of, to
The internet.
You're dead to me.
the internet to kind of
My
when no one
gateway-
can see my face and my shame.
My gateway drug was one of the stranger ones. It was Evangelion, because if you sink your teeth into Evangelion and you like it, you're smooth into anime. But if you find Evangelion and you hate it, you get turned off forever. It's one of those hit or miss ones because it's just so crazy and creepy and strange.
I like the Doraemon where they found the dinosaur egg, and then they raised the dinosaur.
What?
That was oddly specific.
Yes, Ava was crap.
My summer going into my freshman year of high school, the Sci-Fi Channel did their weekend festival of anime, which comprised of 3 films. I watched them twice. It was Robot Carnival, Lensman, and Vampire Hunter D.
You realize that that is the exact same thing. That was the first anime I ever saw.
Robot Carnival.
Robot Carnival, Lensman, Vampire Hunter
We
D.
must have watched the same festival on the Sci-Fi Channel.
I think we did. I was in 4th grade.
Oh my God, I was gonna go. How old are you?
I'm only 24.
Holy shnikey bobily mushrooms! I'm older than you.
You should see me with my mustache. I look like I'm 30. Uh-huh. All right, so in terms of, anime fandom coming to Otakon, now many of you go to other cons. Say Kineticon is a big example. How does Otakon compare to the other conventions in terms of how they treat the webcomic artist or the artist, how they run the artist alley, how much you enjoy going to the convention, and how much business you do? A lot of topics there, but I hope we'll get some good.
I think Kineticon is the best example. I think Kineticon is like the Boston of conventions, in my opinion. It's the biggest little convention I've ever been to. The people there, I mean, the convention's growing and it's getting big, but it still has the feel, to me at least, of a really small, personable convention. And I think that's the lure that's the lure to it for a lot of people. Not to mention that it is amazingly friendly to webcomics. A big convention like this, yes, it is amazingly good for business, amazingly good for sales and exposure, but it is, in my opinion, a lot less personable. Just for the sheer size.
Well, it kind of has to be in that case. So
Yeah,
that's not really blaming anybody. I mean,
No,
it's
it's
just
not
a
really
fact.
blaming anybody. It's just a numbers thing. I mean, it's like a big corporation can't be as people friendly as, say, like Joe's Diner down the street.
Well, I mean, I live in Hartford, so I mean, Kineticon is a very, very kind of no-brainer con for me. It's very stress-free. Me knowing the people who run it personally, I've kind of taken my own personal, I've had my fingerprint on Kineticon itself. They let me run my film festival now, which we just had our first year of, and we're going to have it next year as well. So, and along with that, I mean, I'm helping a lot of the other people who are not local to the area. I help them around, stuff like that. So, in terms of the con, I'm not sure how much of me being a local person factors into that, but Otakon is definitely a lot bigger, a lot more stranger in a strange town kind of thing.
I think we should take this time to introduce someone who just walked in to the room. Well, actually, we should let him introduce himself, I suppose.
Why would you go and do something silly like that?
Because I love you, Grom.
Yes, No, seriously. All right. I am not actually Grom. That's just Mookie's, thing. My name is actually Garth, and the last name is Graham. But if you spell it funny without the second A, you do get, in fact, Grom. Yes, exactly. And I, as everyone in the room I think knows, but the people listening don't, I do the webcomic community.
About the Kineticon thing, Garth and I attended 2 cons. One con just before Kineticon and then Kineticon itself. And this kind of goes back to your question about the Comic Con thing. is that our first convention as community was WizardCon Philly last year. And so we had attended webcomic, we'd attended conventions as guests, as attendees, but we'd never been behind the table yet. And so going to WizardCon Philly straight up as a comic convention and then coming to Kineticon, it was a very stark contrast between the two, and who we met, who we talked to, who came to talk to us. And I definitely agree with the two people that have already talked about how small and how familiar the people at Kineticon were versus the bigger con that is WizardCon, as well as the crowd and the people that you meet there.
And since this is a free form, and this also kind of touches on the larger versus smaller conventions, there was something asked about Comic-Con, was there? That I missed?
No, it was how.
We were talking about Philly Wizard World and the other Wizard World and how different they are from anime conventions. And
Oh, yes. Okay. Yeah. Two different worlds completely.
Basically,
comic books are not the same as manga.
basically how shell-shocked comic book fans and sci-fi fans are versus anime fans, and how personable anime fans tend to be over comic book fans and sci-fi fans, who kind of tend to stay away from each other.
Yeah, the comic book fans are, and sci-fi as well, are they're very into themselves, very into their work, not their work, but their interests and nothing else. There's less of a community, I think, going on there. It's very, very. People look at the merchandise, look at the comics, whatever they happen to be, the con for, and that's about as far as it goes.
well, I guess, why do you think that is? Why is the science fiction and American comic, not so much the indie comic, but the old, we like to call them underwear perverts, but the superhero comics versus indie comics and webcomics, and why are the communities so different despite the fact that they have many similarities in terms of what they actually are?
I can take a stab at this one. I think it has to do with just for which ones cater towards which audiences. I mean, the anime community seems to be centered around. I mean, I don't mean this to sound insulting, but a lot of the anime culture comes from online and comes from the younger crowd as well, and a lot of that caters towards just inhibition in general. And I think with sci-fi being more of, I guess, a personal interest, and people who like sci-fi usually tend to meet in real life, not on the internet. This is just me kind of shooting the breeze. I don't know if that's the right phrase, but it's like anime community just seems to be built on inhibition in general. So with that inhibition comes a lot of shared passion and a lot of common interest. I mean, this is coming from someone who doesn't even have the common interest, but I see the passion in them, and I respect the passion, like any other.
Sci-fi fans, I think it's almost like a code word between them, and they're very careful about, I think, who they let into the club, so to speak. So I think a lot of them are very guarded against a lot of these youngsters, so to speak, who are just running blindly and enthusiastically towards anything new and cool looking, whereas they have always been very careful as to what they choose, what they tend to like, and I think it's just generational, really. I think if the sci-fi fantasy crowd became a little more accepting of the anime crowd, I think, well, maybe a whole new sort of convention would be born. A hybrid, almost. A sci-fi anime convention. It'll never work. Never work.
No.
I'm surprised our friend Conrad hasn't chimed in with something about 4chan at this point.
We're just gonna get
I
into that
have
anyway.
nothing to say about 4chan. Like 3 years ago, when I was a freshman in college, I discovered this website off a link to a very questionable webcomic that I was reading at the time called The
Which one?
Lounge.
I thought you were going to say questionable content, make some
Yeah.
kind of joke, but
No. It was
Ah.
it was a very questionable webcomic that I read during high school, and I found a link off of it, and I started visiting it because back in the day it used to be funny, and now it's a pile of crap, and I've disowned it entirely.
Now, what exactly is 4chan?
I've been studying it and I would say, I don't know, like Jane Goodall among the apes.
It's where images go to die. Well, no, not really. They just get shared around in a giant pile.
But what kind of images? That's what I want to know.
Everything.
Mostly pornographic.
Oh,
I mean, I guess the way I would go with this is that, like, you all are very savvy to the internet, webcomics and such, but, fark.com. or versus Slashdot, and how like there's levels of how contiguous the conversations are, and how much someone who is not into the crowd can follow them. And like someone who doesn't know about FARC culture could not read FARC and understand it easily. 4chan is beyond even I have no idea what these kids are talking about. It's like a foreign language, and now I know how my grandparents feel about computers.
To be fair, some of the boards on 4chan aren't terrible boards. I do visit wallpapers occasionally to grab, fresh wallpapers when I need them, and technology can be an actually useful source of information.
You read it
when
for the
necessary.
articles?
Yeah, generally, I venture into /s every now and then. No, but the popular boards are all crap because they're just completely overpopulated with 13-year-olds. I can't deal with it.
Oh, so the popular things are crap, but if something's obscure, then it's suddenly cool?
No, because 13-year-olds don't care about technology and they don't care about wallpapers. They just care about posting up their favorite porn image.
Can you really have a favorite?
Yes,
you can.
The internet is for porn.
Porn.
Oh, come on. I was going to try and start a musical here, but it failed on me. You guys have...
You think any of us can sing?
Oh, yeah.
I've been in a musical.
Born.
I can sing Bob Seger because he uses exactly 3 notes.
Nice. I've been in Cradle Will Rock.
Wow.
I love that musical. Don't judge me. That's about unions. What's wrong with that?
Did anybody else notice that the panel sucked this year?
Yes.
I have things to say about
the Bukake panel.
That was like the most popular panel.
What was it?
All right, that was an unfortunately named panel that would not have been allowed to have that name had people noticed it. Do-it-yourself Bukake is just a hentai drawing panel that they called it something controversial in order to get people to show up. Kind of like how 4chan staged a fake fight at their panel last year.
Nice.
Didn't they have a hentai drawing panel in addition?
There were multiple hentai
It
drawing
was last night
panels.
at 10 p.m. and I was in attendance to that panel.
One of our friends won a prize.
For what? The best hentai?
No,
the
for
best
scariest
penis.
dick.
What did they
No,
win?
no, wait a minute. As in the one...
No, they drew the scariest.
Okay, I was going to ask the one with which they were equipped by whatever being may or may not have created them, or the one that they constructed
no,
on a piece of
hentai
paper.
drawing. It drew.
I was under the impression that hentai was drawn. So this is crossing a line, I would think.
Well, I guess in terms of panels, what do you guys think of panels at anime cons? I mean, it seems that panels are generally used, well, cons in general, they're generally supposed to be, at least the way most cons seem to see them, as fans trying to show something off or do something. Should they be more controlled? Should only people who know what they're talking about or experts be allowed on these panels? Should it be anyone? Should they be more strict, more loose? Because obviously a lot of people agree that the panels are generally not so good these days. And what can be done about that? I mean, many of you speak on panels, so...
I think one of the best examples of a finely done panel is Heroes and Villains, done by someone in this room, because he knows what he's talking about. He draws from everywhere, good, bad. He doesn't just talk about his own stuff, and then he opens it up and does point counterpoint with people in the audience. That's what panels should be. Panels are not just, look what I've done, I'm really cool. It's supposed to be a level of discussion based on shared information. And so you lay forth the information ahead of time and then you discuss it.
I'm gonna kiss you full in the mouth. You know that? He's talking about my writing unique heroes and memorable villains panel, and panels are magnificent in what they are, in what they can achieve for you. That heroes and villains panel, for me at least, has gained me a ton of new readers. People have come up to me afterwards and says, "I don't know what you do, but I'm going to find out now because I loved your panel." It's a great way for people who are just getting started in webcomics or anything to get some exposure and some face time. Ideally, they are, I think, a boon to conventions and one of the real drawing points, because conventions that are just a big dealer's room, like Wizard World,
Anime Expo.
yeah, any of those conventions that are just a big dealer's room that have no panels, no one likes them. But there are very good examples of bad panels, and I'll let the assembly take care of that.
Someone has been waiting with bated breath to speak on this topic.
Sorry, I'm just way too opinionated. Mookie, your keyword there was ideally, because obviously your panel.
This is going to be one of those "this is why communism fails" speeches.
Panels are great on paper.
But the computer is my friend.
And fascist.
I've attended Mookie's panel twice, and it is the ideal panel. It's a person. I'm not saying.
I'm making me blush.
I'm not saying this.
It's a wonderful panel.
I'm not saying this to compliment you, but I mean it is an informative panel. It speaks on personal experience and what other people. It's information that's being shared about a subject. The problem is that my very little knowledge of panels. I've attended a few. I've been on it. I've attended the webcomic ones, both in the audience and on the stage. This year, the webcomic panel, which I've only heard rumors of, I didn't actually attend it, but there was only
5 minutes.
I heard that there was only, and seeing the schedule too, there was only one person actually on the panel who had anything to do with a webcomic, and that was Matt Boyd from Matt Hall, who doesn't really like to talk that much. So
Ian was there too, right?
did he? I don't.
I heard that he walked off.
I heard Ian ran.
Yeah.
But
Ian made a run for it.
I don't know how many other people were on this panel, but there were at least 3, including him, and one of them is a webcomic critic, which you really can't have because it's just no more than a fanboy talking about a medium which he really doesn't understand anything about. So, and especially with webcomics, which are, idealistic and just so self-congratulatory as it is, you need some people to actually have some sort of criticism and who know things about storytelling. I'd love to see Mookie actually take control of that panel as well, although he kind of does it already, but...
Well, for anyone in
I
our
want more people to know what they're talking about behind the panels.
For anyone in our forums who've witnessed the epic arguments that have occurred in the forums of the Front Row Crew forum, the fact that we agree almost entirely on this point is amazing because I've been to numerous panels recently where I or someone I know is actually an expert on the subject that they're talking about, and people do there was a panel on the Nintendo new system, the Wii, and the person doing it didn't really know anything about the Wii. Wasn't a Nintendo expert or anything. They were just some dude who decided to run a panel about something they thought was cool, and they didn't know anything, and they just kind of rambled on stage. Or there's panels where people don't know what they're talking about, but the audience always assumes that anyone up on the stage with a microphone knows what they're talking about.
I think a lot of it has to do with the fact that a lot of people just like the idea that they're panelists. They don't even care about the panel itself.
Yeah, I gotta admit, I like the fact that I'm a panelist.
Well, you know what you're talking about,
Yeah,
so
usually.
It helps. I mean, usually.
Yeah, I guess I would honestly really like to see panels be more, I don't want to say credentials because I'd hate to get to that point where you need to prove that you know what you're talking about to get on a panel, but maybe some sort of, show something a panel you've done before.
Well, people can tell if you know what you're doing or not.
See, you'd think that.
I do think that,
but
ideally.
most panelists aren't, the person who's running the panels never meets anyone involved in the panel until the day the panel is supposed to happen.
I'm talking about the audience. The audience is going to know that the guy upstage is cold bullshit.
No, they don't. The audience have no idea.
I don't have that much time.
It depends on how confident the guy is with
That's
the microphone.
true. Well, it's confidence.
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to rag on the Geek Speak guy because he's a cool guy. And we've been on his show and he's been on our show. But this Nintendo Revolution Wii panel, he didn't know anything about it. He was just kind of talking.
Okay.
The audience were asking him the kind of questions that you would ask at like a Nintendo press conference, as though he would know the answers. And he kind of BS'd half of them, but the audience really does think whoever's up on the panel is just an expert, and they're there by the grace of whatever gods run the panel.
Huh.
I'd like to say, just kind of segueing a little bit, and maybe a little, I'd like to just, throw out to the assembly, I'm growing just generally distaste, I'm sorry. I have a growing distaste for general webcomics panels in general.
Honestly, I agree entirely. Webcomics they're not necessarily a fully mature medium, but they're out there. It's not like you need to explain to people what a webcomic is anymore.
Well, no, it's not that. It's that when anime conventions or any conventions lump all the webcomics guests together and put them on hey, meet your favorite webcomics guests. The last few that I have been on, with the exception of, maybe one a few years ago, have been terrible. And it's not because the people who are on the panel are terrible people. What ends up happening is it becomes very unfocused. And I'm going to sound so elitist by saying this, and I really don't mean it, but a lot of the veteran webcomics get mixed in with the newcomer webcomics. And a lot of the veteran webcomickers know to keep their answers kind of brief. And this is no fault of the people who are just getting started in webcomics, who want to get their faces out, who want to say something that's memorable. But when one person asks a question that could be answered in under a minute by one person up there, but of course everyone wants to chime in if you've never been on a panel before. So the same question gets answered the same way over the next half an hour.
So how do you all feel about, say, having professional moderators at panels like that? Do you think someone who's actually there to cut people off or direct the conversation, aside from the people who are on the panel?
I think that's a great idea. It was tried this year at the Uber webcomic panel at Kineticon, but it just kind of got a little out of control because there were more panelists than I think is healthy.
It's always sad, and I've noticed this at a lot of webcomic panels that I've been on, the general webcomic panel that we kind of been all talking about, is that there, more often than not, it seems to be that there are more panelists than people in the audience.
Plus, you're talking about adding an editor to webcomics? That's
Heaven forfend. That's against everything we stand for.
Exactly. That's why it has to be disorderly for this to work. The webcomics is an ideal.
Brian, you're a madman.
Speaking strictly as a panel goer, I would rather see panels better distributed and better organized rather than seeing a moderator. I would rather see, as Mookie stated, veteran webcomic artists with veterans and beginners with beginners. That way people can pick who they want to see, pick what answers they want to know, rather than having a man stand in the middle and try to sort it out while it's going on.
I'm talking more in terms of panels that exist. I mean, there are people who know their stuff, but they're not good public speakers. There are people who do like a wonderful show or a wonderful comic, and they don't know how to massage a crowd. And I'm talking about more, have someone who know, like professionals who know what they're doing to direct the conversation so that people who have something to say can get it out without sounding dumb, even when they're obviously not dumb. They just don't know how to deal with a crowd or with, a situation where someone who's loud takes over a panel because there's no moderator to shut them up.
I absolutely agree with that. Some people who are just all talk and no substance can easily overshadow one of the most brilliant writers who just gets really nervous in front of everyone. And the reason why he does his work in front of a webcomic, behind a computer screen, is because maybe he is afraid of crowds. So I agree with you completely on that.
One of the things that Kineticon did, not this past year, but 2 years ago, was they had their meet and greets with 2 or 3 comics at a time. And the interesting thing about that is that you could say, hey, I want to go see Dominic Deegan and Mac Hall and VG Cats all in one panel. And then you know that you're only dealing with that small group of people with only those small questions. Now, I realize I just picked very strange combination, but instead of having 50 people on a stage, when you ask, what's your inspiration? And have everybody answer, and it would feel strange with 50 people on stage to ask, so, Mac Hall, what do you think about this? And have nobody else be able to answer that question. Yeah, it could move faster, but you would feel, as a questioner from the audience, you would feel rude to everyone else on the panel to ask that.
That format did not work for me. They paired me up at Kinetic. That was a very noble idea that Kineticon did, to pair up webcomics. But I got paired up with Tim Buckley of Control-Alt-Delete and Brian Clevenger of 8-Bit Theater. 2 very good friends of mine, by the way. I love them both to death. But that year, the questions were the questions that were asked to, quote, the 3 of us, they answered, and by the time they got to me, by the time I opened my mouth, someone else was already asking those 2 guys another question. So I was the third wheel.
See, that's interesting, because that format actually worked out for me.
You
were paired up with 2 other people. I was paired up with 1 other person. And
yeah, but that was purely by luck.
Well, it was by luck, but it did work out. I mean, well, also, an addendum to that, what happened 2 years ago was that they had all of the groupings of webcomics, and then they had their Uber webcomic panel. So all the meet and greet stuff got all the stupid, random questions that are always asked. It got them all out of the way with all the smaller
Where do you
panels.
get your inspiration?
All those were
What's
covered.
your favorite fruit?
That's why 2 years ago the Uber webcomic panel was great, because all of the bad questions were covered out of the way, and then all the important ones were done at the Uber panel. And I was paired up with Scott Ransomere of VG Cats, and it was one other person, and it was a very controlled environment. Everyone was there for them. But It was by pure luck that it worked out for me, just because Scott's kind of a shy guy. I'm not. Conversation turned to me, stuff like that. But I mean, I think it would work, that kind of format, just if you tweaked that and not just rely all on the Uber webcomic panel, especially because the webcomic panel is repeated the same at every convention. It's all the same questions.
Yeah, that was the thing I've noticed the most is that, I mean, if you have a generic panel that's just, we are webcomic artists, people always ask the same questions no matter what. How would you feel more about having the webcomic panel where it's the webcomic panel, our topic at this convention is blah about webcomics or blah about whatever, and then it's just kind of more roundtable. Kind of like this, only with a lot less alcohol.
I'm actually
Yeah, that sounds like fun.
Well, yeah, because everyone
You keep talking
here
about all this alcohol, but I'm the only one with a glass of wine. So
honestly, everyone here,
all right,
we
thanks,
all
Garth.
had drinks,
Except for
and
Conrad.
as the conversation went on, everyone was so into it that they all kind of just put their drinks down and forgot about him.
I think you're right.
C-squared
Anything,
represent.
I'm gonna say I drank steadily throughout this entire conversation.
Glasses.
anything to make general webcomics panels more focused, I am all for.
Yeah, I think if the topics were good, because the topics are kind of limited also. There are more topics, because the last thing I would want to see is a webcomic panel where the topic is like promotion, because for an audience, obviously they don't care about the promotion.
Well, it depends on the audience. I mean, what if it's an audience of aspiring webcomic artists?
That's true. It depends on your audience, but I mean, I guess that would be the best one for, I don't know, Otakon, because there'd be much bigger pool to choose from.
Yeah,
I think if the topics were good.
You could have a panel about anything at Otakon and people would go
That's
to
true.
it.
I think an interesting thing would be to group the webcomics. I made a weird list a minute ago, but if you group the webcomic genres sort of like by people who do one-shot-a-day joke strips, if you did people who were maintaining a high in-depth storyline, if you grouped, if and when you as the convention staff, if you were to control and with some level of finesse, hopefully, who was at the panel, what the topic would be, you could sort of move the conversation along like you're saying, and maybe you wouldn't need an Uber webcomic panel, or maybe you could deal with those groups of people individually throughout and just say, okay, for one question for this audience, so you don't have one question for 50 people, you have one question for 20 people, and then you have the next question for 20 people, and then you have the next question like that. You'd have to really work at it, and I haven't put enough time or thought into how it would work out, but I'm just making up ideas.
I think people just have to stop looking at webcomics as a concrete thing. I mean, it's just people see webcomics, and that's, I don't know. What are you trying to say? Like they say, like seeing baseball is just a sport, so it's like they use that to cover all sports. So a webcomic is a webcomic is a webcomic doesn't quite work.
Yeah, I mean, as a completely non-webcomic artist, it seems to me, my perspective.
Kind on the web. That's the genre. That's it.
I mean, I guess my perspective, purely as a fan of webcomics and a friend of webcomic artists, seems to be that the general webcomics panel existed when webcomics were a new thing, and people were like, "What's this all about?" Or, "Oh my God, all the webcomic artists I love are there, and it's just amazing, and they can ask these questions." And now, it seems like it's just an unnecessary thing. Like now, podcasting is kind of new, and a podcasting panel seems like it has a great draw. But 2 years from now, if people are still doing generic podcasting panels, they would be, I think, just as, I don't want to use the word useless, but useless as generic webcomic panels.
Well, I mean, yeah, you think of it like if you were to have at an anime convention just one panel that just says anime panel, and that's it. I'm not sure if that would work.
To explain to all the people coming to the anime convention what anime is.
Yes.
Right, exactly.
What influenced
Brilliant.
you to watch anime? It'd be the same thing.
And especially at a convention like Kineticon that seems to have made its claim to fame being the webcomic-friendly convention, having a generic webcomics panel seems kind of useless.
Especially because they've almost gotten away from the webcomic catering. They had the webcomic catering when they were doing the several panels, grouping people together, and now it's just the one big, panel.
But they invite all of us.
Oh, well, I live in Hartford.
Yeah, well, Not all of us can.
I still want them to pay my plane fare. I'll drive to Bradley Airport, have them swing me around in the air, land me, get a cab right to the.
No, you just go to the airport and hang out in the lounge for 4 hours till you.
Brian,
So I
I'll
feel
grab you by the ankles and I'll swing you around in the air. How's that?
That's cool. I'd go to Connecticut for that. I think.
Sexy.
Plus, if you give me a
I
badge.
will love swinging tomorrow.
I actually had a brief conversation with Matt Daigle, the con chair of Connecticut earlier, and he said that this year was a very strange year for scheduling, because a lot of people were either not showing up Friday because they couldn't get off work, or they had to leave before Sunday even started so they could get back, or something along those lines. So it was very strange to try to arrange things that, I mean, even guests that were showing up were asking questions through email of, well, if I buy a 3-day pass, do I get a discount if I'm not going to be there Friday, or something like that? And he was very confused by it because they hadn't had this issue in other years, and they could split things up across multiple days, whereas in this convention it seemed like Saturday was the main king day.
Well, actually, in terms of, I mean, I go to like every freaking convention now, and in terms of the convention, I guess, industry, smaller conventions are, for most people, a one-day affair. And as we saw with the New York Comic-Con debacle, when it just collapsed under its own weight, the fact that they didn't expect people to show up and everyone in the world showed up Saturday, unless a con is large, like Katsucon, Otakon, even and Connecticut is getting there. They're very close to being the, I guess, big con category that it's very, people won't take a vacation day from work to go to the con all 3 days, and it really is economical to go one day. So all the cons that aren't in Otakon are having a huge problem with the fact that they have more people Saturday than all the other days combined. But if they put programming on Friday, a lot of people don't show up to it. I don't know if there's an answer to that other than become a bigger con or...
That is a bigger problem, I think, more for like the fall and winter conventions as opposed to the summer conventions. Friday programming for obviously summer conventions aren't hassled as much because people are out of school. A couple of conventions are smart enough to start their programming on Friday at like 5 or 6 o'clock at night, because that's when people are out of work and out of school and out of class. And I've gone through the lines, yeah. So it's seasonal, size, and I guess luck.
I'm basically run out of questions. You guys want to wrap up? I can.
I don't even know what a podcast is.
I'm so sorry.
Well, you should come to our live show tomorrow at 10 in Panel 4.
I want to be on that panel.
I've actually just not too long ago figured out the pun of podcast. Broadcast.
I had to tell him.
I think that's witty. 'Cause I hated the term before.
Yeah, the problem with it is that so many people, they hear, oh, you have a radio show? I'm like, yeah, it's a podcast. Oh, well, I don't have an iPod.
Broadcast.
Yeah.
That's awesome. I love technology.
It's a pun.
A puncast.
Ha.
It's a
puncast.
Puns?
I
Who
said
said
it again.
puns? I love puns.
Puncast.
All right, so I guess we'll wrap this up now with one fun question for everyone, and then I'd like everyone to go around and once again introduce yourself and say what you do,
Can I also
whether
tell
it's a
my favorite
webcomic
pun
artist
joke in the
or
Sure, man.
I don't know, being a general ne'er-do-well. So, what is your favorite movie ever? And independent of that, what do you think is the best movie ever?
Thank you.
And then what you do and who you are.
Oh no.
We'll start on this side of the room because Brian here is very
Brian
excited.
Carroll is going to talk for 3 hours.
So giddy.
Not only will he tell you what his favorite is, he'll tell you why.
See if they match up. Best and favorite.
No.
Wait till he talks to us about why our favorite movies suck.
I hate your favorite movie.
It's true.
See, the thing is,
Podcast.
I know my favorite movies suck, but I understand that they suck and I love them anyway. We'll start up.
Yet, I'm not allowed to play World of Warcraft.
No, you're
Because
not.
It sucks.
It does.
You are so.
I have a hard time picking my favorite movie, but I'd say that one of the ones that's coming to mind off the bat is The Incredibles. That one really impressed me. As opposed to one of the movies that I think is one of the best. Even though it bored the heck out of me in places, 2001 was put together really, really well. I last saw it several years ago, and so I don't necessarily have the analysis and the strength of mind to really remember it. But at the time, I thought it was well put together.
And of course, who are you and what do you do? Again, for our listeners.
My name is Larom Lancaster, and I feature in Community.
God. My favorite movie ever. I really can't. I mean,
if you can't name name A.
Well, a favorite movie of mine has to be The Imposters, which is written and directed by Stanley Tucci, because you know it. I love you. Anyway. But I just think that the movie is remarkably well put together, and it's just fun. I just find it extremely fun. I think one of the best movies ever made, Citizen Kane.
Cheers.
Yes. Because I don't know, just everything. It's hard for me to put properly into words why I like it so much. I just do, because I am not in the frame of mind to properly tell you right now.
Yes, you squared.
I'm Kat. I really don't do anything, but I consider myself part of the Genre Vu street team.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
stay tuned for my panel on how to become as important as a webcomic artist without actually doing anything.
That'll be a highly attended panel.
Perhaps my favorite movie of all time, and I'm gonna get lambasted for this. I love Last Samurai, featuring Tom Cruise. Yeah, I said it. That's right. I love this movie. I hate Tom Cruise as a person, but I think he's a good actor, and I even like the movie despite the fact that it starred a white man as the Last Samurai.
Hey everyone, a Gaijin was the last person standing at the last battle.
White men are immune to machine guns.
It's true.
Brian Carroll, I hate you. But what perhaps one of the best movies of all time, in my opinion, was The Usual Suspects, because as Brian brought up, I love the unreliable narrator. I love the idea that you can't trust the person telling the story, and at the end of the movie, you feel like you haven't learned anything. Like the whole movie was just a waste of time almost. Well, no, not a waste of time, but
It was all a lie.
yeah, it was all a lie. You don't know if it's true or not.
Spoilers, by the way, for The Usual Suspects.
Oh shit.
Guys are saucy.
All right. Anyways.
I haven't seen the movie.
Okay, so I don't take.
I haven't seen it.
So I don't take up any more of anyone's time. My name is Conrad. I have no discernible skills or talents. I'm part of C Squared with Kat, and we pretend like we're important.
He lives in
And
my
he's
apartment.
And he's also a member of the Genre Vu street team.
Kind of. I call it the Genre Vu Pit Crew, but nobody likes that.
Suck a punk.
Yeah.
I'm really impressed you guys got in on this. I really am. You guys have got to run this panel on how to become important without doing anything.
I'm
attend
so
that.
sorry to
So that would
everybody
be
listening.
doing something, and then you can't you ruin it.
Paris Hilton of webcomics? What?
That's what we are.
You just have to drive a car into an Oscar party pool.
I stole a popular webcomic artist's car one time. Does that count?
Who, mine?
Whoops.
Wait, you mean I gave you the keys to my car?
Yeah.
You still have my car keys.
Yes.
Why are
You
we having
bastard.
this conversation?
Why not?
All right.
C Squared ain't nothing to fuck with.
Paris Hilton
Um, right. So back onto the topic of favorite movie and the best one. I am not the person to answer this question.
Like I was.
No, I can't. I like too many movies. Tonight I'm going. Wait, no. Oh, right. Shout out to my good friend Brian. My favorite movie at this particular moment in time is, in fact, Constantine. If for no other reason, because I have your cancer.
The one plot point I needed explained to me that wasn't. The only thing in that movie that wasn't explained.
I don't know how you missed it, man. But we're gonna have to watch
I was
it and
waiting
walk
for the
through it.
explanation. The whole movie was full of explanations.
But yeah, so Constantine. Yeah, that favorite movie at this particular moment. The next moment might be something as silly as like iRobot, followed possibly by like Singing in the Rain. Who knows?
Moses supposes.
Moses supposes his toes are roses.
But Moses supposes erroneously.
Correct. As odd as that is. And once again, I am Garth Graham. I am the artist and creator of the webcomic community, and I came late to this conversation, much to my chagrin.
Which is not actually taking place in some sort of fancy studio. It is in one of our hotel rooms.
How else would it be?
Laundry everywhere.
My favorite movie ever made is The Adventures of Baron Munchausen by Terry Gilliam. It's such a wonderful fantasy that just eschews most all reality and just tells of the immense power of storytelling, even if it's a total lie. But who knows? I just love Baron Munchausen for the adventure that it takes me on, and that I just can leave reality behind. One of the best movies I think ever made was The Iron Giant.
We had a small bit of clapping at that.
That movie is such a tearjerker, even though it's not a very sad ending. I cry. I think every time I watch that movie, I cry a little earlier into the movie. So I think eventually I'll just cry with a opening credits roll.
Mention it to you and you'll start crying.
Yeah, or just say Mookie the Iron Joe.
Oh, hey, I get Mookie's mic this time. Oh, you didn't tell what you do.
As if no one doesn't know.
I don't like to brag.
He's Kaiser Soze.
I am Kaiser Soze. My name's Mookie. I am the writer and artist of Dominic Deegan Oracle for Hire.
All right. All right. At this particular moment in time with my whimsical nature, my favorite movie has to be Everything is Illuminated, which is an excellent film with excellent music if you ever have the chance to see it. Yeah, it's a very really whimsical movie, and I kind of love it to death, and it's beautifully shot. And probably because I'm dating Brian Carroll, I have to say Citizen Kane is the best movie ever made. But in my personal opinion, I think that in my world, the best movie ever made is Wings of Desire, which I don't think anyone in this room has seen except for myself. In retrospect, it was actually probably should have been a huge influence on my comic. It was eventually made into a horrible American remake called City of Angels, which I hope none of you have seen. I hate Nicolas Cage. Oh, God.
Think of the Goo Goo Dolls song.
Right. Okay, yeah.
What was that?
If you'd let me keep going, I eventually would have done something that was somewhat like that song, almost.
No, I don't believe you.
Well, it would have been as close as my voice is going to get after 3 days of shouting at all of my friends.
What's the name of the original film?
Wings of Desire. It's a beautiful movie.
I have this horrible curse of filling in everything that movies or stories or books or anything leaves out. So I like latch on to the parts, those shining jewels in all the crap that are awesome, and I build up what should have been instead of what is.
It's
and
a
I ignore that.
Movie.
So I think I would actually really like this movie that I did not know City of Angels was based on, as City of Angels was actually kind of enjoyable.
Actually, I have seen it. They
You
showed
have?
it. They showed it to us in architecture, so that we would know where that movie came from, because they had a film series that they were showing us great classics, and that was one of them.
It was made in like the 80s.
Well, not to rush you, but GarageBand, for anyone who doesn't use Macs, is somewhat terrible, and we don't have more than about 10 more minutes of recording before it arbitrarily decides to stop.
I can make this fast.
By the way, I'm Aido from the forums. You probably may or may not know who I am. I've been mentioned on Geeknights a couple of times. I do a comic that nobody should read called Fallen.
Oh, shut up.
You shut up.
No, you shut up.
You shut up.
I will eat your family.
Munch.
I would like to apologize to Brian before he starts. My knowledge of movies, I probably have watched fewer movies in my lifetime than he watches in a month. So when I talk about movies I know and favorite things, I'm sorry, Brian.
I pass no judgment on you.
Liar.
The best movie ever made, hands down, and I can argue this point by counterpoint, is Citizen Kane by Orson Welles, 1941.
They're even tastier when you're dead.
That is a quote that no one should know without knowing who is saying, who's being parodied on that. I know a lot of people do. My favorite movies of all time, however, are listed in no particular order. Citizen Kane, The Most Dangerous Game, Metropolis, the original Metropolis, Fritz Lang, not the anime remake, which I've never seen, Rashomon, and Usual Suspects. Oh, Stranger is a great movie, but it's not one of my favorites. F for Fake is another one by Orson Welles, and also Touch of Evil by Orson Welles is another favorite. A lot of them come from different decades, which I'm trying to keep with a theme if I were to make a top 10 list. But those are my favorite movies. Everyone go see Citizen Kane. It is a jewel of the cinema. What's that? Back to the Future is my childhood, and I will say that I have to give a shout out to Robert Zemeckis, even though I don't like the movies he's making now. Back to the Future is a wonderful, wonderful franchise. I like them all equally.
Excellent.
And of course, who you are and what you do.
Hi, I'm Brian Carroll. I consider myself the curator of Instant Classic.
He hates all your favorite movies.
I'm Brian Carroll, and I hate all your favorite movies.
And he can tell you.
Thank you, dude.
I think
Thank you.
is going to be
No, I think it's
good. And that was Geeknights with Rim and Scott. Special thanks to DJ Pretzel for our opening theme.
Be sure to visit our website at www.frontrowcrew.com. If you like our podcasts, you'll love our forums. Make sure you visit them. You can send your email feedback to geeknights@gmail.com. And if you want, you can leave us a voicemail at 206-333-1537.
Geeknights airs every weeknight, Monday through Thursday.
Geeknights is recorded with absolutely no studio and no audience. But unlike those other talk shows, it's actually recorded at night.